Welcome to the midnight hour. The sterile air of Mercy General Hospital hung thick and silent on Sarah's night shift. Fatigue gnawed at her, the flickering fluorescent lights blurring into a monotonous drone. Suddenly, a movement in the corner of her eye jolted her awake. A figure, a patient in a worn blue gown, shuffled down the hallway, hunched and frail. This was unusual. Most patients, especially the elderly Mr. Thompson in room 13, were confined to their beds. Curiosity piqued, Sarah set down her clipboard and approached him. "Mr. Thompson," she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. But the figure kept walking, a slow, methodical pace that seemed both urgent and detached. Sarah quickened her step, but as she rounded a corner, the hallway was empty. Disbelief turned to a cold prickle of fear. Had she imagined it? Reaching Mr. Thompson's room, Sarah found him tucked under the covers, fast asleep. Relief washed over her, perhaps exhaustion was playing tricks on her mind. But the unease lingered. Hours ticked by. Sarah settled back into paperwork, her eyes occasionally darting down the hallway. Then, again, a flicker of blue. Mr. Thompson, or someone who looked exactly like him, was heading purposefully towards the nurse's station. This time, adrenaline kicked in. Sarah sprinted after him, calling out his name. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge her. As she reached for his shoulder, he vanished into thin air, like smoke dissipating. Panic clawed at her throat. She stumbled back to his room, heart pounding against her ribs. There he was, peacefully sleeping. This couldn't be real. Was she losing her mind? Determined to confront her delusion, Sarah waited, eyes glued to the hallway. And just as before, the spectral Mr. Thompson appeared. Ignoring her pleas, he continued his spectral walk. This time, Sarah wouldn't let him disappear. She chased him, a desperate marathon through the silent hospital. He led her on a wild goose chase, turning corners, disappearing into rooms, only to reappear further down the hall. Finally, with a burst of energy, Sarah managed to corner him in the elevator. The metal doors clanged shut, trapping them in a confined space. Sarah's breath hitched. Up close, the figure looked less like Mr. Thompson and more like a hollow shell, shrouded in an unnatural darkness. "Mr. Thompson," she croaked, her voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, eyes like black pits staring into her soul. Its mouth opened, revealing a cavernous darkness within. No sound emerged, only a chilling emptiness that sucked the air from the room. Terror propelled Sarah to slam the elevator button. The doors lurched open, revealing an unsettling world beyond. The familiar hospital exterior was gone, replaced by an endless expanse of darkness. A thick, swirling mist obscured everything, and the sky, devoid of moon or stars, was a menacing expanse of black. Fear, raw and primal, flooded her. But before she could scream, the ghostly figure pushed past her and shuffled out into the darkness. Sarah stumbled after him, a desperate need for explanation battling the terror gripping her heart. Back in the hallway, Mr. Thompson lay peacefully in his bed. Was she crazy? Had this all been a hallucination? The empty, dark world outside the hospital doors remained etched in her mind, a horrifying confirmation that something wasn't right. Sarah stumbled back to the nurse's station, the silence of the hospital now a deafening roar. This was no longer just a night shift. This was a chilling encounter with something beyond her comprehension. As dawn painted the sky a pale orange, casting long shadows through the windows, Sarah knew this night would change her forever. The hospital may have held Mr. Thompson's body, but it was the restless spirit she'd glimpsed that truly haunted the halls of Mercy General. Now, she had a terrifying secret, a secret about the restless souls that walked the line between life and death, a secret she didn't know how to handle, a secret that would forever mark her as a witness to the unseen. Rain lashed against the windows of Elmwood Elementary, the rhythmic drumming filling the cavernous silence of the building. Sarah, a young history teacher grading papers late, jumped at a sudden rapping on the door. Frowning, she set down her pen and approached the door cautiously. Unlatching it a crack, she peered through the tiny opening. The hallway was deserted, bathed in the cold blue glow of the emergency lights. No sign of a student, colleague, or curious animal. Relief washed over her. Must have been the wind, she thought, attributing the sound to the storm raging outside. Returning to her desk, Sarah resumed grading, the scratch of her pen the only sound in the room. But the peace was shattered once more. A louder, more insistent rapping on the door. Heart thudding in her chest, she approached the door again, a primal fear gripping her. This time, she flung open the door, ready to confront whoever was playing games. Still nothing. The hallway stretched before her, empty and silent. A shiver ran down her spine. This couldn't be a coincidence. Had she left a door or window open? Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A lone figure, a man in a worn tweed jacket, walked purposefully down the hallway. He looked familiar, yet unidentifiable. Sarah called out, "Excuse me," but the figure continued walking, not even glancing in her direction. Curiosity warring with growing unease, Sarah decided to follow him. He moved with an unsettling fluidity, gliding silently past classrooms, his head held high. Every time Sarah tried to catch up, he seemed to accelerate, disappearing around a corner just as she reached it. Panic clawed at her throat. This was a game, a cruel trick, but by whom? The school was always deserted at night. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the chill of the night. Then, rounding a corner, she finally faced him. He stood motionless, his back to her. Relief and fear warred within her. Here he was, a tangible being, not a figment of her imagination. "Excuse me," Sarah began, her voice cracking with tension. "I was wondering." The man turned around slowly. His face was shrouded in shadow, obscured by the dim emergency light. Sarah felt a primal sense of wrongness emanate from him. His eyes, when they met hers, were bottomless pits, devoid of any light or recognition. Before she could even scream, he vanished. Poof. Gone. Like a wisp of smoke. In his place, Sarah saw them. Dozens of figures, men, women, and children, all clad in worn, outdated clothing, their faces blank and emotionless. They drifted down the hallway, their feet barely touching the ground. Ghosts. The school was filled with ghosts. Sarah turned and fled. Back to her classroom, back to the familiarity of papers and books. But the sight of the figures burnt into her mind's eye. She slammed the door shut, locking it, but the feeling of unease wouldn't leave. Was this some kind of historical reenactment gone wrong? But the clothes, the faces, none of it seemed to belong to any period she knew. They felt ancient. Huddled on the floor beside her desk, Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, the silence broken only by the relentless drumming of the rain. As daylight slowly began to creep in, painting the room in a pale gray light, a single thought echoed in her mind: Elmwood Elementary wasn't just a school. It was a place haunted by the past. A past that refused to stay buried, a past that had chosen Sarah as its unwilling witness. The next morning, the school bustled with activity. Children's laughter filled the once silent halls. Yet, for Sarah, Elmwood would never be the same. The ghosts weren't a nightmare, a fever dream. They were real, and they were a chilling reminder that the history between the school's walls held secrets far darker than anything in a textbook. And now, Sarah knew, she wasn't just a teacher, she was a keeper of those secrets, forever bound to the restless spirits of Elmwood Elementary. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and comment.